Is that working? Yes?
Yes.
Loud enough? Is that okay? A bit louder? Is this okay? Oh, I've never used a megaphone before. Could be a bit chaotic. Wow, lots of people here. So firstly, thank you so much everyone for coming, and thank you for waiting for me. I'm really sorry. This morning was a bit chaotic, and I have only just written my speech this morning, so rather than oh my god, sorry, this is going to be horrible getting used to this. Rather than like a perfectly formulated speech, I've got a few salient facts to share with you all. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm one of the co-claimants, Dr. Alice Brough. Suddenly loads of traffic. I used to be a livestock vet, so I worked in the pig industry for 4 years, and this is why I'm here. So, the arguments against factory farming are overwhelming. In fact, I can't think of a single good argument for factory farming, for human health, the environment, economically and socially. I wrote a 46-page statement, expert witness statement for this case, so I've just drawn a few little bits from it, but quite a large proportion of that statement was quoting DEFRA's own scientists back to them. So nobody's disputing the facts here, yet they have the audacity to continue this rhetoric of we have some of the best welfare standards in the world, best food safety, best animal health standards, which simply isn't true. Even if it were, we already import over a quarter of meat products consumed in this country, including 60% of pig products, from countries that use 10 times the amount of antibiotics as us. Sorry about this horrible megaphone situation. 10 times the amount of antibiotics that we do in their livestock, with much worse conditions than our own. So they haven't really a leg to stand on in that, given that we're funding other industries elsewhere and are merrily making trade deals to do more of that. In the Mirror article today covering this case, DEFRA's comment had that usual rhetoric, but then ended with, all farms should report suspected disease immediately. I don't know what they mean by this, because only a very small handful of diseases are actually notifiable with any statutory controls in place, including many zoonoses which are not notifiable. To give you an example of the pig industry, DEFRA's pig disease surveillance has diagnoses for about 0.008% of pigs slaughtered in the UK each year. So I don't know how they can claim that they have any sort of a firm grasp on disease status in the UK. Some of the most concerning zoonoses, including swine flu and salmonella, are not notifiable and rely entirely on voluntary submissions with no monitoring on farms or in slaughterhouses. In fact, we used to have monitoring for things like salmonella, but that's been scrapped. Antibiotics. I'm sure somebody's already mentioned this morning that this week The Lancet published a new report on antibiotic resistance, which is now accounting for 1.2 million deaths a year, directly causing that, and associated with nearly 5 million deaths every year globally. So that's leapt up from previous estimations. We're constantly told by DEFRA that the UK have reduced our usage of antibiotics in livestock, and there are guidelines in place. There may well be, and we may well have reduced, but it has gone like that. There's now a plateau where we cannot reduce antibiotics further because of the disgusting conditions that we're keeping these animals in. They need them to survive. Again, to look at the pig industry in particular, which is particularly hideous and the reason that I chose to go into this career, they use the same amount of antibiotics as all other sectors put together. They use 97% of those antibiotics en masse, so to groups of animals through feed or water. This is massive overuse and massive misuse. Some sectors barely record what they're using, with cattle only recording about 9% of their use. So again, I don't know how the government are claiming that they have a grasp on this. Consider this, on factory farms, the numbers involved and the space that they're all crammed into make it incredibly difficult to assess individuals for disease, isolate them and treat them. You are then relying on a correct diagnosis on site, often by a farmer who will have a stash of antibiotics on farm to choose from, They must then select the correct antibiotic and administer it at the correct dose for the correct duration of time. And in my experience, that simply doesn't happen a lot of the time. Once one or two animals have a disease in an environment like a factory farm, it just spreads like wildfire, again, requiring mass medication. This is really rapid fire, sorry guys. Studies show that 75 to 90% of antibiotics remain unchanged, so unmetabolized in waste. So that's coming out the other end of an animal into their waste and then being spread on our crops and leaching into waterways. The UK's livestock produce about 145 million tonnes of waste every year. That is far too much to be deemed fertiliser. It's destroying the land and leaching into water. Add to that the chemicals used. So in factory farms, most operate an all-in, all-out system. So all the animals will go in and then they all come out, and you clean and disinfect rigorously with really toxic chemicals. That all just washes into the slurry. Other pharmaceuticals like hormones and all the zoonotic pathogens previously mentioned, plus many more, spread on land. The Environment Agency did a survey in 2020. 95% of dairy farms failed to meet water protection standards, and half were actively polluting at the time of the visit, a visit that would have been prearranged, might I add. Very briefly, 6 million tonnes of feed are imported into the UK every year for livestock, including using 1 million hectares of South American rainforest. So not only are we destroying our own country's land, we are destroying other places. And the majority of this feed is, of course, used on intensive farms where animals do not see the light of day and are not grazing. Factory farming is a gross misuse of public... Those P's are really getting me. Gross misuse of public funds. Bovine tuberculosis, as an example, uses £150 million a year of taxpayers' money every year, a disease that we've had for over a century. We still do not have an appropriate testing system in place. We still don't have a vaccine. And we're supposed to believe that the government are able to control novel pathogens arising as we speak. You cannot develop a test for every disease, a treatment, a vaccine. You must factor in the costs of things like culling when it goes wrong, subsidies already in place, and then the human health costs and the cost of pollution. That was a very brief look at factory farming. In short, the government plans to deal with this look about 5 to 25 years in the future. Everything that's presented to us is a target to hit in the future and guidelines. Somehow missing the fact that in 25 years' time, if we continue on this trajectory, London's going to be underwater and we won't be having this debate. We will either choose to work towards a safe future now, or we will be left with no choice at all. Thank you everyone so much for coming, and yeah, brilliant work. Off we go.